but we're going to invite now all the panelists to turn on their cameras and unmute, and joined by two more people. First of all, Elena Gandvarg is the principal at Flint Capital, an international venture capital fund investing in technology-driven companies. And Elena is a VC investor with over 15 years of experience in enterprise software, telecoms, digital health, SaaS, VC, and management consulting spanning US, Europe, and Israel. So really experienced. Thank you for joining, Elena. And we also have Olivia Kramer from The Craftery, which is a British venture capital firm. Olivia sits on The Craftery's deal team and does everything from helping brands to partner, as well as analysing sectors that maybe The Craftery is interested to explore, and executing deals once those brands have been identified, and supporting them on their journey pertaining to finance and investment raising. So really good panel. Thank you all for joining us. Hello, Olivia, and hello, Elena. Maybe just
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Joan. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to start just by saying it's an often quoted stat that only 2.3% of VC money goes to female founders. We had started to dip in a bit of a debate with Tal, was that structural systemic barriers, or is it something about women not taking the risks and identifying as founders? What are the, I personally believe there's some sort of structural obstacles in there. What do you believe there are, and how can they be overcome? And whoever would like to comment on that. Maybe Elena.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, it's there's not one answer to this, because what I see personally, I look at startups from the morning till the evening. You know, that's what I do, and generally there are fewer female founders that come to me to pitch. So why is that? You know, it's generally there are less females that start their own startups. I think it's a known fact, right? For various reasons. Another problem, of course, that was already mentioned today previously, is that we know about a lot of problems and challenges that are totally not familiar to male partners, and I think that females have to do a better job in trying to explain the problem. You know, like I always suggest, when you pitch as investors, start with a problem statement and try to explain it the way that people who are not familiar with this industry at all, with this problem, can understand. Don't expect male partners to relate to what you're building, you know. And I have the same expectation from the startups, from the founders who come to me and pitch about their products in cybersecurity, you know, the area that I'm not familiar with, but I want to understand. So I think my expectation is, I would love to see, you know, like just females, not expecting that male investors will just understand what they're talking about. On the other hand, I would love to see more male investors that are willing to understand and willing to listen to, you know, because it has to come from two sides in a way.
Yes, I completely agree. Thank you. And we had a comment in the Q&A chat that said, when Tal was speaking, is it possible that male investors should move along the curve and actually, you know, educate themselves? Should we put the problem onto the sort of female founder, or is it a problem for all of us to solve? So I mean, I don't know, Tal, if you have a comment on that.
I think my comment, you should expect my comment, first of all, and it could be very easy. The person with the money is the one making the decision. You want to go your way, go find your money somewhere else. It's that easy. I mean, if you know to pitch the problem and the solution, and you know to convince that you know what you're doing, you have tested the market, you have validated, then you're not different than any cyber, fintech, blockchain, whatnot. You're just a startup. And that is common to everyone. If you are a good, and I'm saying, people say startup, they think technology. I say startup, I think people. And we all say to everyone, we investors, we invest in people. because your technology cannot talk to us, and definitely FemTech, I cannot use the technology. That's
so
certain.
Elena, if we have to adjust our pitches to bring people on the journey with us, how can FemTech founders adjust their pitches to be more inclusive to kind of people that haven't had first-hand experience of the problems whilst remaining true to their vision?
Well, I think, I think it's easier than a lot of people might think. Because we investors, we look at a lot of pitch decks and we don't understand what is being pitched at the very beginning. Very often, not always, but often we don't understand what is being pitched to us. We are not aware of the problem statement that is being pitched. So I think that female founders just have to explain the problem statement, to say to explain the market, how many market size, that we're not talking about tens of women. We're talking about, like Daisy said, like 100% of women will be going through menopause at some point of life. So so there is a substantial market, and how do you plan to solve this problem? So on the other hand, again, coming back to this, I would love to see more male colleagues to attend this kind of events, right? Because otherwise it's very difficult to make people aware, because there is, so one problem is like to explain the problem statement. Another problem, for example, I'm sure, that when investors look at the young females and they think, okay, maybe the idea is not that bad, but she's young, she's gonna get married, she's gonna get kids, and what's gonna happen to her startup, this kind of things. I mean, we all know that it happens, and the majority of women in tech space, startup space, they're dealing with this.
I don't think we think this way. I'm sorry to say, we don't think this way anymore, and it's not because of Me Too or anything. We just don't stop thinking this way. We see female entrepreneurs with the same abilities as men. They act, but even to say like men is not right, because you don't need to. They act like they should act as themselves. It's about the person. Wait, Joe, wait just a second. You like to cut me off. Just a second. I'm saying here to all the entrepreneurs listening, it's about you and it's not about anything else. Take yourself under consideration. Just decide that, first of all, you want to get better training on how to do it the right way, because you're not born a startup, same as you're not born a doctor or a lawyer. You're born what you're born. Then you need to learn. But none of you went to startup school. I don't know how many of you gone through acceleration programs that kind of teach you more. But in the end, you can get help. And this is the amazing part. If you now will turn to people here, in this community, in this session, in this forum right now, don't ask for money, ask for help, advice, support, training. Everyone will smile back and help you. You just need to do that. Don't wait like this and say it will happen to me, because it won't. And then the rest follows and the rest flows. But you just need to kickstart it a little bit. And this is what everyone here is trying to do. I put my details, not just for you to, I have already 7 invites. That doesn't impress me. I need to see people that want to do something with their startups, something, not with their life. I'm not a life changer. I just help you with your startup to pitch the better way, to reach it the right way, to be more prepared. This is what I'm willing to do. FemTech, ShmemTech, or whatever else.
Thank you, Tal. I'd like to pull Olivia in, actually, because she's joined the panel, and I'd love just a brief introduction and comment from Olivia. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I work at the Craftery. We're an FMCG investor. We invest across North America and Europe in businesses with kind of $20 million plus in revenue, and investing checks of sort of $20 to $75 million. If I can just touch on what Elena says, I think, there is this idea that men can't relate to sort of female products. And I do think there's an element of men like to use that excuse, but I think it's incredibly intellectually lazy from them. And so, the majority of men aren't end consumers of the products they invest in. They're not using these B2B SaaS, products at all. So it's just an excuse for them to avoid the kind of hard work around it. And I think there's 2 ways that, I think you can make pitches just far more compelling. The first is one that we've already talked about, is numbers. Numbers are really hard to ignore. And if you have big ones, people can understand. It's hard to ignore the number of women who are going to go through menopause, the number of people who are menstruating, so the more you can rely on those kind of things, I think it sort of adds gravitas to what you're talking about. The other is one about stories. People, I think, really remember stories. So I personally am a huge fan of Michael Lewis, and I think the reason his writing is so compelling is that actually he tells stories. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be your story when you're pitching, but someone's story. It'll make it far more relatable and it'll make it far more memorable. So those would be my kind of two key things. I do think there are structural elements to play, and obviously it's a really early industry, and I think that's part of the problem too. I think these issues are it's only ever going to get easier. I think the more we have a sort of a big exit to be inspiring and for people to look at and see a trend, I think that'll be really helpful, but it's early days.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and some of the early signs are encouraging. This sector's moving in the right direction, but yeah, there's still structural obstacles at play, as well as those founders, to Tal's point, maybe need to just show the numbers, have a convincing pitch, tell a story. Elena, did you want to come back with any comment?
Yeah, I think it's an important conversation to have, because when I hear Tal saying, we don't think this way, I think this is in a way invalidating the experience of many of us, because we do have Tal, we had this experience, we continue to have this experience. I myself heard to this comments when I was having interviews in my early days, okay, are you applying for a sales position, but you have a child, and why don't you just stay home with your child, and this position requires travel, so it's probably not good for you. So a lot of us went through a certain experience in our lives. So first, it would be good if even though you think differently, which is great, that you also realize, take a moment and realize that this is a real problem that many of us are dealing with.
But the fact is that you're not dealing with it, because it is what it is. So you can say that you have encountered it, but can you go to an investor and say, listen, before we start, you can't, so deal with it. I posted 2 days ago a photo, me standing with 5 guys. You know what the feedback I got from women? Why is there no woman inside it? I said a winning team. Sorry, someone said, I can't click like because there is no woman. Would you see a man write this about a bunch of women hugging and saying, why there is no man in the picture? It doesn't work. Stop being something that you can do or can change. Go with the flow. Make your argument. Present like you should present. And yes, need a little bit to explain more about the subject. But again, investors look to find, riches in what they invest. They want this to grow. They want to bring themselves. With FemTech, they can bring maybe a little less in way of understanding, but a lot in the business side. And in the end, well, don't go to someone who doesn't respect you. And if you feel it the first second, stand up and leave the room. But otherwise, try and leave something in the room, at least for them to think they should behave a different way. But fighting it all the time, it's kind of weary.
When I was pitching, I met some fantastic men that maybe didn't have personal experience, but we could really relate to the founder's story of fertility challenges, and they really stepped out of their comfort zone to make the effort to understand it. There were equally women that maybe hadn't experienced it and weren't able to. But I think that it's important to kind of push the needle and try to change the ecosystem within which we're operating, because there's still so much need for change in terms of representation. I feel passionately about supporting female investors, because they can, as wealth holders or as investment decision makers in funds, really affect the innovations that come to life. So it's so important to champion diversity, not just in female founders, but in the investment landscape as well. And Catherine, you're nodding along there. You mentioned that 1/3 of the investor community on Seedrs are female. How is that in the founder community? How many female founders are you seeing raised via your platform, and what are the trends that we can expect going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of brings up a point that kind of Eleanor said earlier. I don't see as many female founders that are going out for investment. I maybe in some cases I think that's true, but it's I think sometimes people will say that there are not as many female founders and they're not asking for investment, and that's why the statistics are as low as they are. I think that's a little kind of that typical response is a little short-sighted. I think that the stats are that like 1 in 3 startups are founded by women, but then you look at the statistic in terms of the funding that goes to female startups, and it's, you know, it's much smaller. So something is going wrong there. We have it in our portfolio. It's a similar number actually. About a third of our portfolio is either female founded or co-founded, which is great. Again, always looking to push that number up. But we think that the diversity within our investor base is directly correlated to the diversity in our portfolio. The more women we have investing, the more female founded businesses we believe will get funded. And I think partly it's to do with investors understanding the topics, the struggles that female founders have you kind of go through when they pitch. And I think it's also worth saying that there are structural things at play. I think, you know, we'd like to think that gone are the days where, you know, in investor meetings, people are being asked, you know, well, are you planning on having kids? Are you, those obvious kind of, although I have just seen something in the comment section, which is quite shocking, which shows that those questions are still happening in some places. Yeah. But it's more to do with the, sometimes it's investors don't even know that they're doing it. So there have been studies that have been done which show that typically male entrepreneurs are asked promotion type questions about their business. So it's all about the opportunity and the scale of the market and how they're going to go and take advantage of that. And women are asked prevention type questions. So they're asked about the risks and what's going to stop them from doing certain things. And they're very subtle questions. And sometimes female founders actually don't know that this is happening to them until someone says, you know, you kind of compared the two side by side. But I think it's just acknowledging that some of these things are still happening, even if people don't realize that they're doing it themselves. And then from the founder perspective, it's then just, you know, what can you do? It's about controlling the controllables. So it's things that have already been mentioned, but making sure you really highlight, you know your numbers, you highlight the numbers. As I think Olivia said, it's hard to argue with numbers, right?
So I'd love to move the conversation on a little bit, just to sort of some more positive tips for our founder community that have joined us today. For each of you, I might ask, like, what's one common mistake we see from founders? It doesn't have to be female founders, actually, because, you know, we're all founders. What's really common mistakes you see? What's one really big kind of opportunity to stand out from the crowd? We've heard a little bit about storytelling, which I thought was a great one from Olivia, but maybe you could in turn have a think about some common mistakes you see and kind of common opportunities to shine. And also, just to expand that a little bit, not just in the pitch moment, what should founders be doing before you get to the pitch meeting? Actually, is it about network or you know, really getting your numbers tight or other things? Like, it's not just the pitch meeting, it's the whole journey up to and after that point. So love your thoughts on that, please.
You should remember that there is only one first meeting you can have. So, and when you pitch, it's very, very important to do your homework. You know, there are multiple sources and lots of opportunities to research how to pitch, how your deck is supposed to look like. You know, what should be there, what shouldn't be there, and so it's like really an easy thing to do. Do not come with like 40 slides. You know, don't start with like, we're next Uber and in 3 years we'll go public. You know, like just don't do all of that, and just do your homework. You know, explain the problem statement, explain how you're planning to solve this, competition, how you're better, market size, and a very straightforward exercise. So and this is something you have to prepare for. So when it comes to so it's not a real mistake, but I noticed that very often female founders, they pitch slightly different from male founders because the male pitches are more aggressive. You know, I see a lot of this like, we are next Amazon, we will disrupt this, and IPO in 2 years, and things like that. Female founders, they're very accurate in their like prediction, very honest, you know, more reserved, and you, sometimes you have to be aware who you're pitching to, you know, and if it means that you have to sound, like just to go out of your comfort zone and to sell, and then this is something you have to do.
I would add to that, since I'm giving lectures about storytelling every second day of, I'm sorry, Olivia, you go first, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, touching on that, Elena, it's interesting because I'd always wondered if that was just my own experience. I find that male founders will often present numbers that they have no, a tiny chance of hitting. And that's, every investor then automatically discounts them. They make their own projections off of that, but they're aiming for the moon. I feel a lot of the time female founders present numbers that they know they'll hit. But the problem is that if the investor is then doing that same discount, the opportunity looks far more attractive. So there's this sort of balance between wanting to present a plan that's, very exciting, but it also, achievable. And I do worry that sometimes I think female founders are extremely honest when male founders may not be.
That resonates. I definitely got feedback in that direction, that we were like, yeah, this feels like, a challenge, but totally achievable. And we don't want to be disingenuous in our pitch.
And it's crazy because female founders will always be like to me, I'll hit these numbers. I know I'm going to hit them. I can tell you. The male founders, if you ask them to put money on, if they're going to hit their numbers, they're not. You're going to invest and they're going to, write them down the next month. And so I just worry that unless you've noticed that cycle, that, some of the investors are going to.
Yeah. I love that. I play a lot of poker, and I'm deciding now to bring more of those poker tactics into my pitch meetings. But anyway,
if I can add something about this,
Please.
Joe, I want to say the following. First of all, you are doing a presentation, meaning you are presenters, meaning you are actors. So first of all, start acting. That's a number one. Number two, be confident. Men would push you not because you're women, because investors act this way. They just want to see your focus. So the way we play it, we kind of throw stones at you, but some candies. Also, you're going to do this as well, of course. And you're going to solve this as well, of course. And you go, of course, because you only see the money. And in the end, I'm saying, listen. I'm giving you the money, but I'm feeling like you don't know where you're going. You're not going with my money. Know where you're going. Be assertive. Just know that, not because be assertive because you need to show me that you know what you're going to do with my money. Hence, you have a roadmap and you have milestones. And as much as my ideas could be good, your answer should be, great idea, phase B, not now. This is where I'm going to go. Now, you can tweak it a little bit, but of course, you need to be respectful and listen to me. But you don't have to agree with me on everything. And startups tend to do that. Women do it some more. Don't. Have your truth, have your way, make it clear. We respect it a lot, much more than you saying, okay. Be present in the room. When you enter, be present. From the second you step into the office and the second you left, also in the elevator, shush. Go out, then you talk whatever you want. Make people feel that you're inviting enough to listen to what someone tells you. But again, you don't have to agree. On the other way, don't disregard too much. Know to pitch your problem and solution. I don't care for the rest. You don't know the market better than me. You don't know competition better than me. Problem and solution is the one thing I don't know better than you. This is where you act. This is when you start explaining. You always say, what do? Immediately you say the solution. Maybe I don't relate to the problem. Why are you sharing? I didn't sign an NDA, right? And what you're having is the next Amazon or something. Enough. Speak problem, see that I relate, I understand. You don't go ahead without it. Once I understand, explain the solution. Rest is easy.
And how might it differ a seed round, a pre-seed, or a seed round, or a Series A? What might a founder have to have up on their sleeve or dial up in a different stage of investment raising, to all of you?
Let's see the investors here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from our perspective, like the earlier you are, you have to a degree, you have less to talk about. You don't have as much traction. You might not have revenue. You have less numbers to talk about. You can talk about the size of the opportunity, but in terms of what you've done so far. So we always find that the earlier that we are working with opportunities, then the kind of the size of the being super clear on your it's already been said, but kind of on the problem and your solution. But the team is really, really important the earlier you're investing. And actually, when you're investing at pre-seed stage, then investors are investing in you as people more than anything else. So I think making sure that you're really solid on kind of your team, where the key strengths are. And if you've spotted any gaps in the experience, then plug them through advisors or mentors or whatever it might be, because that's important to investors as well.
Really helpful advice, thank you. And we're seeing some comments in the chat about actually going to your critics and people who do not believe in your product in terms of giving the most valuable feedback and seeking that out, and trying to find that constructive input, where you can kind of find holes. I don't know if that's kind of a technique that you would advise founders to look at. Maybe we can just finish, because we've got kind of a couple of minutes left, on, I think Catherine mentioned that the FemTech sector was forecast to be 1.18 trillion. I don't forget by which date, or is that where it is now? Where is the FemTech sector going? How do we think it's not going to be a bubble? I hope that pops. This is going to be a really meaty thing that just keeps flying. But what are the hot picks? What are the trends? What should we be looking out for? And where's like a really kind of important place to look at right now? I think maybe Olivia might have something to contribute.
Sorry, I mean, I want to go back to a topic we've kind of chatted about earlier, which I think is one of taboo, which is we sort of brushed upon, which I think is one of the things that has actually held the industry back before. And I really hope that we've kind of hit a tipping point where, talking about menopause and talking about menstruation means that actually we're no longer afraid to do these things in pitch meetings, and it's sort of common dialogue. So I really hope that, we've hit that moment where we're not going back. I also really do believe there's a multiplier effect. So, as soon as we have that first major exit, the pattern for people to invest will start to really develop. In terms of sectors that I'm particularly interested in, I really think menopause is exciting. I think it's one that, has taboo with it. Frankly, I think as a woman, I don't know enough about menopause, and I think that's remarkable. And so I think there's a huge amount of companies to be already playing in this space, but also to continue developing, whether it be on the sort of diagnostic side, the tracking side, or the product side. So that's where I'm kind of keeping an eye out.
Sure. That's really exciting. I feel the same. I'm hitting 40 next month, and I don't know anything about it. And staff, that our parents' generation didn't speak of it. And we see the same. I work in fertility, so pregnancy loss, infertility, again, another really taboo subject that's just not spoken enough. And 1 in 4 pregnancies are miscarrying. And so we're doing a lot of work at Fertility Circle around that emotional support piece, and now partnering with fertility clinics to make sure that's in place across the IVF journey, which is super important and underserved. So really resonate.
That's awesome. And I hope once we start having those conversations, we don't go back, because we realize the value in them and actually how human they are and actually how common they are. And so I really, really think we're on the right path.
Great. This is turning a bit more upbeat now. Yeah. Well, it seems like an exciting time to be in the FemTech community. I'm really delighted to be kind of in the same scene as you guys, and I hope we'll cross paths again. Some of you I already know, Catherine, others I look forward to approaching in our seed round. So thank you all for your contributions. I'm going to, and your time, I'm going to hand back to Kate now, who will continue with the rest of the webinar. Thank you all for joining.